This video is a walkthrough of my edit of this nice light green Mercedes 300 SL Roadster parked on a street in central London at night. I will leave timestamps for sections of this video, so feel free to check a particular one out if that's what you're after. Overall, this is me explaining my process of editing a photo without too many complications. First off, I'm opening the RAW file. With Camera Raw plugin installed to Photoshop, every RAW file will open through this window. I'm putting on some basic adjustments before opening the file in full. You can see straight away that the car has similar colors to the background, and I will focus on this later. Next up, the image is open, and I'm using Ctrl-Shift-R shortcut to open Lens Correction plugin. I'm looking for automatic geometric correction and removal of chromatic aberrations, both are ticked in the top right corner. After accepting the corrections, I'm saving the file as PSD. Now I'm using Ctrl-Shift-A shortcut to open Camera Raw again. This is a very useful transform tool I'm using to correct the image while it is in one layer. You can see that I'm hesitating between going for straight buildings or straight car, since the photo is taken on a slightly inclined street. Using the grid is of course important for accuracy, but if you find it difficult to see what's going on in the background, feel free to turn it off, as I do here. Finally, I decide to opt in for straight angled buildings behind the car and using scale adjustment to get rid of white borders around. Next up, I'm clicking on Quick Selection tool in the tool panel on the left. I am now selecting the car for putting it onto a separate layer. You can see that adjusting the tool size is done with holding Alt and right mouse click. And moving the mouse to the right or left. I'm using space with left mouse click and mouse movements to move around the image. Control and mouse scroll is used to zoom in and out of the image. Using the selection tool is simple too. Left mouse click to select the area, while holding Alt reverses the tool and you can correct the shape of the selection. There are other ways to mask a part of the image, but this one seems fastest to me. With a crude selection done, I'm pressing Ctrl-J shortcut to copy the selection onto a new layer. I turn the other two layers invisible, click on Eraser tool and the tool panel. Left click opens up Tool Options menu and I'm selecting Solid Brush for the eraser. Closing the menu, I'm now erasing shadows under the car, which are quite difficult for Photoshop to identify while using Quick Selection tool. You can see me erasing too much at one point and going back with Ctrl-Alt-Z pressed a few times after I consult with the background layer enabled. The accuracy required on this stage varies from image to image. In this case, I expect desaturating background more than the car, and hence using judgment to apply enough accuracy to cover for this. Putting the background layers back on, I'm now moving on to clone stamping. usually the most time-consuming part of editing in my experience. Feel free skipping to the next chapter where I show before and after of using the clone stamping tool. After creating a copy of the current layer with Ctrl-J, I press Alt and left-click to sample the area, then left-click and mouse movements to apply the sampling. You can see the sampling area is moving parallel to application with a relevant shift. This works very well on repetitive patterns such as this fence. Resampling different areas often will more likely achieve a unique result, rather than an exact copy of already existing pattern besides. You can also tell by now I'm using Ctrl-S to save my progress pretty often. Each new layer will slightly slow down your computer, but it effectively creates a backup point for you if something goes wrong. Another useful tool at this stage is Lasso tool. Selecting the area with holding left mouse click, then right click, select Fill option, a menu window will open. Here I am selecting Content Aware option and clicking OK. Using judgment, I can decide where this tool can be helpful. For example, here I used it on a patch of quickly changing lighting where clone stamping could struggle. Using Ctrl-Z to go back one step or Ctrl-Alt-Z multiple times is a common procedure on this step. I hesitate using content-aware fill on large objects, but giving it a try works pretty well in this case. I see that a line between tiles is erased and looking for replacement sample. Deciding to opt in for repetitive clone stamping from a short sample on the sweary tile, I am cleaning up the line, selecting a small brush size and applying the sample a few times to achieve a complete line. The content-aware fill also manages to remove the other relatively large object here. With plenty of material on the left to complete the line, I decide to keep the result of the fill. Deselecting separate layers and the base background layer, I'm using Ctrl-E shortcut to combine visible layers into one. Turning the other layers back on, I can see what has been removed off the image so far and pay attention to other bits I want to work on. Now it's time for adjustments. I'm working on a background layer first, so don't pay attention to the changes on the car, which is on a separate layer. In Camera Raw, I go to HSL Adjustment tab first in this case and playing around with color saturation sliders. With a few luminance adjustments, I'm moving the Tone Curve tab set to Parametric option, then Basic tab. Each option here varies from case to case, but among things I avoid doing is going extreme on either slider and applying too much clarity. Next up, I'm going into Graduated Filter tab on the top in Camera Raw and reset every slider to 0 with alternating between 0 and tab on the keyboard. I thought it would be a good idea to desaturate the ground slightly, and Graduated Filter is a good tool to do so in a subtle manner. Using left click, I drag the filter from the bottom edge, then selecting adjustments for a certain effect. Pressing OK in the bottom right, my background layer adjustments are complete for this stage. I check the effect by undoing and redoing the plugin effects and notice part of the building is visible through the cast window on a separate layer. I deselect background layers, equip Eraser tool and work on removing the building, thus moving it onto the no invisible background layer. Now it's time to work on adjustments for the car layer. In HSL adjustments, I quickly realize Hue tab needs to be used to convert yellows to a light green shade, which helps the color look closer to reality. With HSL adjustments in general, I would not recommend going to extremes unless absolutely necessary, leaving a trace of a variety of colors present. After quickly working on basic adjustments and tone curve, I confirm the changes in plugin. Ctrl-Shift-E shortcut combines all visible layers into a new one. You can now see that I go back to clone stamping as I notice some other bits to remove. And in the case of this white block on the left, to add. I will hesitate between applying the change and do some adjustments to the height of the block extension using Clone Stamp tool. After saving the progress, I am moving on to filter stage and opening Analog FX Pro 2 in Nik Collection, which you can install for free. I am skipping the options offered by the plugin and clicking onto Basic Adjustments tab. In this plugin, most of the times I'm using slight detail extraction, RGB levels and curves adjustment on low opacity, and a slight bokeh effect. I am then experimenting with different options in Film Type menu to see if one will enhance my desired outcome. The one I stopped on introduces some artificial grain, which I remove before adjusting the film effects. A light leak can also be useful here if applied with care. The one I opt in for at tiny strength lights up the right side of the image in a nice way. After saving the results of the filter, I am checking the difference between the steps doing some clone stamping on bits I noticed again. And heading into Color Effects Pro 4 plugin in Nik Collection. Here, among many available filters, I have highlighted those I find most useful, hence my favorites. I add some contrast only filter, usually +3, click on Alt filter and select the next one. In this case, I find use of one of available color balance options on low strength. Then adjusted Darken, Lighten Center filter. In Reflector effects, I usually opt in for soft gold option as it adds warmth to the image in a subtle yet effective way. Some of Remove Color Cast filter. And additional polarization. Only real way to know which set of filters works better for your envisioning of the edit is to try them at first, then keep trying on the next edits. You can also see me dragging a function around pretty quickly. In this way I sample changes of the function at its extremes. I try on some more contrast only, but decide not to keep it. And after removing it from the filters applied, I'm clicking OK to apply all. After checking the effects outcome, I create a copy of the current layer and head to Camera Raw Split Toning tab. My personal procedure here is to start with red highlights on 3 and blue shadows on 3, then adjust the balance towards the right. Then I am shifting the shadow slider to the left until I find the balance which looks good. Shifting the highlight slider is not necessary in this case. Then I'm heading to the basic adjustments again to apply some further changes, usually making the image brighter overall. Next up, I'm creating a new empty layer, selecting Overlay Blending Mode and a soft brush. My personal settings are 16% for the opacity and flow for this stage. Pressing X at any time here will switch color between black and white. Now I'm using the brush to add volume to the image. Most of the time I'm focusing on the car, making light areas lighter and dark areas darker. After comparing the results, I am combining the visible layers with Ctrl-Shift-E. After some more clone stamping, I am clicking on the car layer and using rectangular marquee tool. I'm selecting an area containing at least the entire car. Clicking anywhere around the area with the quick selection tool will select the car, as it is everything that can be selected on this particular layer. Going back to the top layer, pressing Ctrl J, I have my car on a separate layer again. I decided to add some color to the background without messing with the car. Having done the adjustments, I'm combining the layers again and heading to Camera Raw for the last time. Here in the Detail tab, I'm using the Luminance and Luminance Detail sliders to reduce clarity ever so slightly and create a subtle glow effect. I am then deselecting all layers except for the first and last ones and comparing them, looking out for any unresolved issues. In this case, I spotted a few more bits to clone stamp out. Using Ctrl-Shift-Alt-S shortcut, I'm opening the Save for Web menu, where the main setting is quality set at 100. Saving for web is important if you're planning to publish the photo to a website using image compression, to save the colors as they are on your original edit. After clicking Save and selecting a place to save the image, I'm done with this edit. A few things to note. Clone stamping part is not only continuous but also very subjective. You can do none or spend a few hours doing it on the same image and achieve a result that you like in both cases. Another important thing is to only merge existing layers without creating a new one if you are absolutely sure you will not need any of them in the future. If I merged my car layer with others before the end stages and without my layer selection saved, I would have to use quick selection tool to mask it out again. At the same time, having too many layers will likely slow down your Photoshop and will be difficult to navigate. And with that said, this fairly straightforward edit is done. As this is my first video in this format, I'm thinking of whether I should do more before thinking of any improvements to the quality and presentation. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.